everyone, and welcome to our Ask an Expert Parent Education Series sponsored by Konick and Associates. My name is Dr. Lisa Konick. I'm a psychologist and founder of Konick Associates, which is a group practice specializing in child and family behavioral health and psychological assessment services. This is the final segment of our series, which is navigating the ever-changing educational climate during the COVID pandemic. And I am pleased to have with me today Sara Miller and Jenna Flink from Nurturing Wisdom Tutoring, and they will be talking to us about educational strategies to support remote learning. I want to mention to everybody that this is a free event, so please do not respond to any requests that might be posted. We have some scammers coming into some of these live events requesting fees and credit card information, so please do not provide any of that information. All of our events are free for viewing. So today, what we're going to be doing, and as part of this parent education series, is we want to provide important information and resources to parents in our community, particularly during this uncertain time. And I'm excited to be offering this educational series for us, especially during the remote learning process. And a lot of us have been in school for several weeks by now and are navigating that. Jenna and Sara, you're going to be talking a bit about how you're seeing some of your families manage this process and how educational supports through a tutor or tutoring supports can be helpful. What I'd like to do is introduce these ladies today, and then I'm going to let them take over and talk about their organization, Nurturing Wisdom Tutoring. Jenna Flink earned a bachelor's of business administration from William and Mary in Virginia. After graduating, she moved to Memphis to teach kindergarten and pre-K. Her experiences teaching led her to pursue a master's in education focused on instructional leadership from the University of Illinois at Chicago. As a tutoring director with Nurturing Wisdom, Jenna discusses tutoring options with incoming families to both help customize an individual plan and match them with a tutor who will be a good fit. Jenna enjoys her work both as a tutoring director and a tutor because she gets to support students in a variety of grade levels, subject areas, and learning styles. She loves to find creative ways to teach new skills and help students achieve individual learning goals, whether it's learning how to read or achieving high scores on the ACT. So if you think about this, these ladies here have a lot of experience from young all the way to college. So we got a lot of expertise here. Sara Miller is a tutoring director for Nurturing Wisdom Tutoring, where she works with families to make sure their tutoring goals are met. Prior to Nurturing Wisdom, Sara worked for 5 years as assistant director of admission at Purdue University. Sara's passionate about college access and Sara's passionate about college access, and she volunteers with Green Halo Scholars, a community-based organization in the western suburbs. In her free time, she enjoys being an average at best golfer, better than me, touring college campuses, and visiting her family in rural Indiana. Welcome, ladies, and we're delighted to have you talk to us about your educational expertise and how we can help families better manage remote and hybrid learning this fall.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about Nurturing Wisdom Tutoring.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Nurturing Wisdom Tutoring is a Chicago-based company. So we've been in Chicago for something like 13 years now. We were started by a former teacher, and she just saw a need for one-on-one support. And so she started tutoring herself, and it just grew and grew into what it is now. So we support a lot of students in Chicago, of course, in the suburbs, in the city. And then we also, we have been tutoring online for a couple of years now. Now we're doing a lot more of that, of course. But we work with students all across the United States and even students abroad as well. So we have far reach in terms of the students that we support now.
And we have been experiencing in our practice, we work with a lot of families and kids and adolescents across the age spectrum from, age 3 until college. And, there's a lot of different programs out there for educationally right now. I think a lot of people have been stressed over the past month about how their program is going to look, how to translate curriculum from in-person learning to virtual learning and remote learning. And we have just a lot of stress parents. So what are you seeing in terms of your parent population and how they're responding and utilizing your services?
Sure. So I think everyone is just a little frazzled right now. And it's important to remember that everyone kind of feels that stress and weight and a little anxiety right now. So it's nothing abnormal. We're all kind of in that same boat together. Specifically with our students, we're seeing a lot of executive functioning struggles. Jenna and I were talking yesterday, students may have, if they're going to school part-time and they're doing e-learning a few days and in-person learning a few days, on days where they're in school, they may turn in their assignments one way.
Mm-hmm.
On days where they're at home, they may have to navigate Google Classroom for one class and Blackboard for another class, and things just look very different every day of the week. And I think as adults, we've all struggled a little bit to adapt and adjust to what living in a remote environment looks like. So it's extra hard for our young kids to figure out what do I do and how do I do it? And that's where tutoring can really come in. We're also seeing a need for kind of one-on-one support. When students are in an e-learning environment, it's not as easy to stay a little bit after class and chat with their teacher about a problem that they weren't understanding. So having that one-on-one, face-to-face interaction can be really beneficial for these kids when they're not always getting it in that virtual classroom environment. I think it's also socially challenging for those kids who are totally remote. They're not seeing their friends, and that's, as we know, very difficult and hard to adapt to. So those are some of the things we're seeing, especially with elementary, middle school, but also into high school. And then specifically for our juniors and seniors, testing just looked very different this fall. It was hard for rising seniors to get into a test at all. And now we're seeing juniors start to think about whether or not they should be testing now, when that process should begin. And they're also working on college essays, which are going to be more important now that they may or may not have test scores. So definitely lots going on and lots to talk about for the rest of the time, because it's certainly been a busy fall with lots of moving pieces.
And that's something I didn't even think about until recently when we were talking about the ACT and SAT. There's only so many slots, and they don't do that remotely pre-COVID. So, the kids that are trying to get retested or taking their test for the first time are really anxious about getting seats. And we can talk about that. That's one of the questions that we'll have for you is the testing prep. Is there more that we should know about your roles with Nurturing Wisdom that haven't been already commented? That was one of the questions.
I think one thing that is important to keep in mind, and one thing that really drew me to Nurturing Wisdom was the role that the tutoring director has in the family's life and tutoring process. So we're not just matching our students and tutors and saying, see you later. We check in usually about once a month, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less, just to make sure that everything's on track. And I found that those check-in phone calls and emails can sometimes be where we're finding that we might need to pivot a little or change the curriculum or add in an extra subject. And that ability to kind of ebb and flow as the student's learning and growing, I think, is really unique to kind of our model and how we work.
Great.
Yeah, and to add to that too, I think, our goal is really to be a team, like a team approach for both to support the tutors, but obviously ultimately to support the students and their families. So, we were here to kind of be, as Sara said, guiding the families through the process. And then the tutors also have coaches that they're matched with that are, to train them on our curriculum, kind of discuss and check in about best practices. So we really want to provide as much support for our tutors as we can, so that they in turn can, of course, provide support for their families as well. So that's, as Sara was saying, something that drew her to Nurturing Wisdom. That was something that really drew me to Nurturing Wisdom as a tutor originally, and why I've just loved working with them since then too.
Thank you. Now, one of the questions that I have and that has been posed is, what are some of the needs you're seeing from families and parents right now? We might have talked about that a little bit, but is there any more that you would like to comment on when it comes to education tutoring?
Sure. Jenna, do you want to take You look like you had something to say there.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add on or kind of emphasize that need for executive functioning skills. And that can look so different for students. For little guys, that might be kind of getting in a routine and having a designated space to sit down and do their work every day. For college students or older kids, that might be navigating, making sure that each class's requirements are met when you're not sitting in a classroom and able to kind of divide that up mentally. Sitting down in front of a computer all day, as we know, things can kind of start to mush together, and that's no different for our younger kids. So I think that we've really seen an increase in executive functioning tutoring, along with how we implement that into families' lives, and thinking of really creative ways to make sure that our kids are taken care of.
Yeah.
So, I was just going to mention, Jenna, so basically a parent may just need to coach through some strategies to get organized, and that might be something that you can help them with. Yep. Organizing the workspace. The process hasn't been going as well as we had anticipated. Give us some ideas based on kind of what our struggles are right now to get our kids more in line with, the model. And I think it is definitely an interesting task because, as you know, every school district is a little bit different in terms of how they're managing their model. So it's not that you can take the same strategy and apply it in each situation. Jenna, you were going to add something. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say a very similar thing that you're customizing to each student's needs, right? That's very different under normal circumstances, and especially different right now. And like you were saying, some strategies that I was just going to add to that, some strategies that parents can use in terms of supporting with some of those things that we can definitely support with as well. Building those routines, helping kids with accountability to sticking with those routines. Some ways to do that. I think Sara or Lisa, you were mentioning this, just having that designated study space with all of the students' materials that they need. It's great to have a schedule on the wall so that they know when are they expected to be on what platform when, right? That kind of thing. So those are great tools to use to just help support with those types of things. Using a planner. I know a lot of students that I'm working with right now, they're really relying on that online platform, but then it's not allowing them to set their own deadlines, chunk things out, things are getting posted in advance. So really supporting with that. And then I think the self-advocacy too, Sara was mentioning, it's just they're not getting as much of that one-on-one time with the teachers. You can't just pop into your teacher's classroom necessarily. For a lot of kids working remotely or even hybrid, it's a lot less time in the classroom. So having some goals around self-advocacy, how to participate in the classroom via Zoom or whatever they're using, right? Kind of working with kids this is how you write an email to a teacher. Let's carve out time in the routine and the schedule to actually do that. So I think, those are just some little things that we've seen have been really helpful that we can help with as tutors. But I think also, if parents want a few strategies that we've just seen are really helpful. And I think, Sara and I were talking yesterday too, and we were just thinking about how hard it is for students right now, for us too, right? That transitions are always hard for kiddos. And I think this is just the biggest transition in the world that we're in right now. So just having, grace for students and understanding that it probably is going to take a little more time than usual to build and find these systems that work for them, just like it is taking us a little more time, I think, too.
I have, as you're talking about that, I think we're thinking a lot about students and how the students can be organized, but a lot of times parents are organizing their kids, and it depends on the age and the level of functional status of the child. Some of their skills might be stronger in executive functioning, and others may require a lot more parent support and monitoring. Do you have any suggestions for parents in monitoring this process? Because parents don't know Google Classroom. I was learning it as I'm going. I'm like, how do I log into my kid's Google Classroom? And the teachers are like, well, you have to be the student. So I'm like, how do I get access? And how do, parents learn how to, or maybe you have some suggestions for parents where the students are submitting things on Google Classroom, but they also might be submitting through other third-party platforms that each individual teacher might be using, and to keep track of all these logins and different platforms might be a bit overwhelming as parents are also trying to work from home.
Sure. Yeah, so I think communicating is key, as with many things in life. So communicating with your student and setting expectations on how much you might be involved and how much you're expecting them to kind of take the reins. And that's going to differ, like you said, based on the student, based on their age range, based on the skills that they currently have. I also think communicating with your child's teacher is important. So if you have questions, they may not be, traditionally in their classroom at their desk like normal, but nothing is normal right now. So I think it's really important that if parents really feel like their kiddo's starting to fall behind, if they have questions about how they can best support them, go straight to the source and don't hesitate to reach out to your child's school, whether it's their teacher, their school counselor, whatever resource they might have there, to make sure that you can best help them at home.
Great. Now, another question that we had was, what resources would you recommend for students with learning differences or those with advanced courses? For example, we've got kids on the opposite ends of the spectrum in here. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so that's where our match process comes in handy, because we take a good chunk of time to get to know each student and match them with a tutor who's going to be a good fit. For our students who have learning differences, we have a number of educators who are tutors, and we'd be happy to try to match them with them. For our advanced students, we have tutors who are subject matter experts in high-level math and science, whether they're physicists or chemists or whatever expert in that field they might be. And we're also not shy to refer students out. So if we don't feel like we're the right fit, we have a resource of or a network of professionals in the education field in the western suburbs and around the country. And we're more than happy to tap into that if we don't feel like we'll be the right fit for that family. But that match process is really the first step in determining whether or not we would be.
Great. Now, another question that I think a lot of parents are going to have is, how much do they struggle through this process on their own? They're good communicators. They may touch base with their teachers, but then at some point, when would they utilize a tutor? What are some of those signs that you would say this is probably when you might need to, and how would they benefit from the tutoring support?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a question that parents often ask is, when should I call you? Or like, I've called you, but when do we really need to start tutoring, right? Well, I mean, I think in general, I talked about this already, but transitions are often a time when we see students need extra support. So again, right now, everybody's sort of in a weird transition right now. So we are seeing a little bit more of that. But under normal circumstances, transitions in grade level, in school. So, freshmen or 6th or 7th graders starting middle school, those are times when we really see students need a little extra boost of support. The other time too is just when an outside voice is going to be helpful, somebody that's not the parent or guardian. We've had a lot of parents tell us that our support has helped them with their relationship with their kid, because they no longer have to play that role of holding them accountable in certain ways. The tutor can kind of be that voice that's different. So I think that can be really helpful too, when that feels a little bit more strained, can help alleviate some of that piece of things, just us as third parties. And I think right now, especially when e-learning is maybe not working for a certain class for students. I've talked to families recently where maybe in some courses, like their history or their English courses, it's going pretty well. The e-learning, doing things via Zoom with their teacher, discussions, things like that, have been totally fine. But then the math portion is really hard for them to do e-learning without that extra support. So kind of, it might not be holistically challenging, but maybe certain classes are a little bit harder. And then we just always like to tell families to give us a call before things get bad, right? So, trying to kind of get ahead of any of those seemingly small challenges before they turn into those bigger ones. So we always recommend that just to kind of nip anything in the bud that's starting to come up.
Good. Sara, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think Jenna,
she covered it.
nailed it there.
Now, the other thing, and I know we talked a little, some of these other questions that are on my list here, what supports can a tutor provide? You're kind of going through a lot of those, and I think you've given a lot of detail. But one of the things that I'm wondering about, what the process would be. So it sounds like somebody could come in and just say, I just need you to give me some tips to get myself going here, versus, I know a lot of the families that we work with have had battles with their kids, even pre-COVID, with this whole homework. Kids come home, they're tired. They don't want to do homework. And that tends to be the battle that parents are already applying coaching and discipline and general life skills, and we're planning dinner and they're working. And then now we have to do this homework struggle. And a lot of times what I've referred families to tutors for is just take it off your plate. Yes, you could help your child, you could, but do you want to have that battle? How are you seeing that relationship? You mentioned sometimes that relationship can be improved, but bringing an outside person in to do that school-related work. Kids don't always want to be showing their worst side to a stranger or someone else. They may not even show it at school. Is this something that you can speak to with some of those relationships, and how you might just be providing that added benefit to taking that off the table?
Yeah, so I think one thing that comes to mind specifically is college essays. It's application season, and we're seeing a lot of families come to us, and the parent could walk their student through, writing their essay and filling out all of the supplemental pieces. But sometimes they just want to have a nice dinner with their family at the end of the day and not have to talk about college applications. So bringing in that third party to be the go-to person for questions, for nagging, for, writing them and reminding them that deadlines are coming and they need to do their work. Can really, especially when we're all crammed in the same house together, I think that now is, no better time to bring in someone who can kind of, be the peacekeeper between the two and take a little work off of your plate. Definitely.
Well, and parents also have an emotional investment in their kids. And I know as tutors, you care about the kids, you want them to be successful, but you're able to take that step back and be a little more objective. So I think the parent's anxiety gets filtered onto the child when they're not doing well academically. It is a reflection on us as parents. We feel like, oh, this is somehow my shortcoming, that my kid's not doing well. And really, sometimes it is beneficial to have an outside party be involved to take that neutral stance.
Yep,
and take the stress down. So what would be the process for a family to enlist with a tutor? And another concern that we've had parents say is, maybe that's too expensive for me. I don't know that I can afford tutoring support. Can you speak to those two areas?
Yeah. So when we get students set up with tutors, so I know Sara had kind of touched on this a little bit, but we always start with a consultation. So it's a longer conversation about the student, what they're looking for to support the student with, just their learning style, their strengths and weaknesses in the different subject areas, the organization, time management, just really digging deep into all the different aspects of school that relates to the student, and just about them too, their interests, their personality. So the goal of that is, one, to create a customized tutoring plan for them. So that we can kind of develop a plan that, sometimes it's just support with school and has some specific areas we're working on there, or may bring in some supplemental materials as well. And then the other side of that is that we also will use that information to match them with a tutor who we think is going to be a good fit for them. So really thinking through that personality match for them, thinking through who's going to be a good fit for the different subjects that they're looking for. So that matching process is really important to us. We know that developing a relationship with the tutor is really important to the student's success and just like overall enjoyment of tutoring in general as well. So those are the different pieces that we do. And then of course, if students are doing something like test prep, we would have them take a pre-test that helps us to better customize tutoring for them, make recommendations about a plan. We also have a variety of different diagnostic tests that we use. So if parents are like, I don't really know if my kid needs help in math right now because e-learning is kind of strange, we can do a diagnostic test to see where those gaps may be helpful for us to fill in there. And then, you know, in terms of the expensive side of things, what's nice about our tutoring is that parents are not locked into any number of sessions. We don't have, you know, big packages that parents have to buy into or anything like that. You know, it's just an hourly rate. And if we have a lot of students who come in and do 1 to 2 sessions, maybe for a final, just because they need a little help. Or I've had parents call and they have, you know, a student has a test coming up next week that they're just, you know, it's a chemistry test, and this is a subject, a unit that's been hard for them. We do a session to, you know, work on that chemistry test. So it can be really, you know, short term or long term, depending on what parents are looking for. So a lot of flexibility in terms of that. And like Sara said, we're always happy to just chat. Those consultations are no charge, and doesn't mean you have to tutor. And we're always happy to just kind of talk about a plan that might be good, or make recommendations or refer out. So always happy to get a call, even if it doesn't turn into tutoring.
That's wonderful. I heard you say something about pre-test and diagnostic kind of assessment. And I know this is something that a lot of parents have been bringing up to me is, I'm worried my kid's falling behind. We've had this terrible gap in learning when we had the initial end of the year last spring kind of break. And we did some remote learning, but it was very different from what we're having now. It was kind of filling in the gap. And parents have been very anxious about their kids falling behind, especially in math. Is there something that parents, if do you have, can you comment on that diagnostic test? Like, is that something that would give like a grade equivalent? I know we could do formal testing, but that's a much bigger process. It sounds like there might be some just subject matter tools that you can use to give a parent an idea of where their kids are managing.
Yeah, I can. So yeah, we have a variety of different diagnostic tests. For math, for sure, we have a few different ones between, you know, elementary school to kind of those upper courses. We have, you know, like AP practice tests that students could take if they wanted to just kind of see like where they were at in terms of their knowledge in those classes, or if they're looking at AP tests. We also have writing diagnostics and can give some feedback in terms of things that would be helpful for students to work on writing wise, you know, reading diagnostics. So yeah, it wouldn't necessarily tell a parent if they're on grade level or not, but we would definitely be able to see if there are big gaps depending on where their starting point is. So, you know, if it's an 8th grader, we would give them the 8th grade level test, and then we would be able to, we kind of create a pretty good analysis for them to look at, so that they can kind of see like, here are some areas, you know, is it main ideas or is it detail questions that the kid needs to work on. So we're always happy to do those again, even if students don't tutor. Parents are welcome to reach out about those diagnostic tests. I'm happy to chat through those, kind of make recommendations about things the kid could work on.
That's wonderful to hear, because I know that's a big anxiety inducing experience for parents right now. Is my kid having a gap because they aren't always tracking with the classroom, especially with all the Zoom, and we have kids on the floor and rolling around and bringing the cat in, and you know, it's difficult for them. Home is not school. It's not as structured. Tell us about the SAT, ACT prep a little more. I know that there are kids that are working on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Jenna said, we have all of our students take a diagnostic pretest. The pretest for either ACT or SAT tutoring is a former copy of one of the tests. So we didn't write our own. It's the real deal, and gives us a really good insight into where a student's strengths and weaknesses are. We can pick up on timing issues, on specific content areas that we might need to work on, and it allows us to put together a customized tutoring plan for each individual student that comes in our door. So it's a really nice way to be able to hone in on what they're great at, what they need work at, and really make the most of tutoring. We can also make recommendations on which test to take. So oftentimes students will take both pre-test and see which one they did better on. And then we're always happy to provide some guidance to families, especially around COVID and the uncertainty that it has brought us in terms of when to take the test and when to get started. So like I said, seniors should hopefully be wrapping up pretty soon. But if you have a junior, now's a good time to at least, give us a call. And there's no rush to get started for those juniors, but it's definitely the right time to start thinking about it and talking about it and at least get it on your radar.
Great. You really have presented us with a lot of options to think about from, early on, filling in gaps, identifying gaps, being organized, being structured in your learning model, communicating, emailing teachers, staying on track, and actually getting help with some of those very specific areas of academics. So it sounds like you're a full stop shop in a lot of ways.
We try.
How can parents get in touch with you if they have additional questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is nurturingwisdom.com. I guess I never type it in. I hesitate as I say that.
Think about it.
And I believe our contact information is on there. On the Facebook Live, I can put in Jenna and I's direct contact info too. So I'll drop those in the comments afterwards so that if anyone wants to get in touch with us directly, they can do that.
Wonderful. So, and we'll be posting this. It'll be available as a recorded series and also on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much, ladies, for tuning in today and sharing your wisdom from Nurturing Wisdom Tutoring. And we'll look forward to speaking with you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Take care.